fast, die young.
Good evening and welcome to another of the industry interviews with the Outcast Creative with me, your host, Lance Dean Anthony Nelson, co-founder of the Outcast Creative. And tonight we've got a very special guest with us, one of the biggest military advisors in film and television working today, Paul BIDDISS. But before I bring Paul in, I'm going to introduce you to my other co-host who's filling in for somebody who had to drop out at the last minute. I'm really pleased to welcome back Robbie from Fighting on Film. All right, Rob, how you doing?
Hello, yeah, I'm great. How are you?
Not too bad, mate. It's great to have you back. It feels like it's been too long already. I've
It's my pleasure.
Been listening into your podcasts. Really enjoyed the Who Dares Wins one. That brought back a lot of memories for me.
Oh, it was a popular one. It really was, yeah.
Lewis Collins.
People love watching him run through a corridor, don't they?
They do indeed. And I've run through that very corridor many times. But okay, so we've got Paul BIDDISS coming on in a second. But before we bring him in, we're going to have a look at some of his work. Now, I haven't got a separate video file, so I've got to share screen, which is all going to be a bit fiddly. So, Rob, if it looks horribly wrong, you just call out to me. All right?
I will.
Of course you will. So let me just get on here. Okay, here we go. And then I've just got to fill the screen like so. See that all right, mate?
Seamless.
Fantastic. All right, here we go. Let's have a look at some of Paul's work. Wow, fantastic stuff. Let me just stop sharing screen. There we go. Well, God, I think anybody be really pleased to have a reel as impressive as that. Let's bring him in, the one and only Paul BIDDISS. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Hello, from Barcelona.
From Barcelona.
To say that.
This man gets around every week. You've got a picture of you in some different exotic location, and you get to run around with guns for a living, and you get paid for it. I mean,
can't beat, can you?
Always own stuff.
Fantastic. So before we dive into your career, and there's quite a lot to talk about, I like people watching to get to know my guests a little bit, particularly in relation to kind of their relationship with cinema and drama and that kind of thing. Can you remember the first film you ever saw at the cinema on the big screen when you were a wee bairn, as it were?
Planet of the Apes.
Really? The first one with Charlton Heston. That's a good first movie to see.
That's what I remember seeing at Woolwich.
And the last film you saw on the big screen?
Last film I managed to see on the big screen is 1917.
Yeah, which
that was at the Royal Premiere.
I heard you might have worked on that a little bit. Rumor has it.
I know. I've heard rumors myself.
Of the historical films that you haven't worked on, I know it's difficult to pick a favourite. So if you had to pick 3 that would be in your top 10, any era, World War II, Sword and Sandals, whatever, give me 3 of your favourite historical movies.
Well, A Bridge Too Far, obviously.
High five, thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'd like to do a Roman historical feature.
I'm writing one, so we'll talk about that.
Right.
I went to see the set in Cinecittà in Rome. You know, the one they've got set up there, and you can do the tour around it. Yeah, and I thought, well, it's here, so let me write something.
I've done some Roman. Yeah, I've done Roman advising before. It's quite an interesting period, especially the warfare. I think I've done enough of Napoleonic stuff now for a while. I think I'll take a rest from Napoleonic stuff.
So, I mean, before you got into working in film, and you've done a few different jobs before you became military advisor, just give us a brief sort of snapshot overview of your career, your military career, I guess, before then.
I served 24 years in the parachute regiment, and then I left the army. Once I left the army, I went into the close protection and the surveillance industry, which is normal route for most servicemen when they get out. And then there was just I had a lean period, because as servicemen, when you're fresh out, when you've been in an institution like the army, it's a completely new environment. And so while I'm finding my feet, a friend of mine sent me an advert for a movie that was looking for ex-soldiers to play soldiers. And my first thought was, why do I want to get in uniform again? I spent 24 years of my life trying to keep out of it. Those that know me in the army will know what I mean by that. And it was a film called Monuments Men, it was being directed by George Clooney. And my eyes got open to the world of military advising.
Okay, that's interesting. Let me just bring you back out of the solo there. So after you did, so Monuments Men was the first time you were ever on a film set. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And what was the next thing for that after that?
So to give some more padding to the story.
Yeah.
I was asked to do a feature part on that film. I went there, told them what I was, and they had me as one of the corps sergeants literally straight away. And then I was asked to do a feature where John Goodman is holding a French guy in a truck, and they wanted me to get out of a Land Rover and walk towards it. And it was all to do about the realities of war, because the film itself was a sort of tongue-in-cheek story about historians that weren't trained, but their sole mission was to rescue artifacts that the Nazis were going to hide.
artworks and that sort of thing, wasn't it? Yeah.
And so I was supposed to be part of a vehicle convoy. I was the convoy, or I was in command of this convoy, and he wanted us just to stop right at the wagon and get out. And I didn't know what the etiquette was. I didn't know that extras are supposed to be there and seen and not heard. And I, to be honest, I didn't really care. I just put my hand up, said, can I make a suggestion, please? To George Clooney, who was directing it. Said, it's D-Day +4. You're not just going to get out, drive right up to a wagon and get out of it. It could be an ambush. So if you was to stop short, just a little bit, get out and survey the area before actually walking closer, it would look more realistic. And he took it. He went, yeah, I like that. Ran with it. And then he only ever does 3 takes. Doesn't do any more than that. And then I got taken away. And I remember one of the extras saying, that's you, Sats, mate. And I was like, oh, well, whatever. And he just said, have you got any details? Because we're looking for someone to take, or we're interested in someone in conducting a boot camp for a film. And I didn't really think much of it. And then a couple of weeks later, I get a call. I get asked to go into Pinewood. And I was asked to make put together a boot camp and a selection sort of day to select the best people for a film called Fury.
Right. Okay.
And that's how it all started.
So you did? Was that the boot camp for the Fury extras? Would that be?
Yes, that's the boot camp for Fury extras. There was another
key background unit.
4 different advisors on there. So you had a German advisor. You had the core cast advisor, who actually was one of the actors as well. He was an ex-SEAL.
Right.
And then you had a tank advisor from the Royal Tank Corps. So you had different advisors, but there was no one actually to advise the extras. The main body of a painting, and there was no one to advise them. So I was one of those people that was tasked to do that. There was a historical guy. I think there was 1 or 2 reenactors there that helped with. We had different stands. So we had marching, we had a historical stand, we had a weapon stand, we had a stunt stand. So we had different stands where all the groups would rotate. But before that, we had to have a selection process to make sure the guys were physically and mentally robust because of the nature of the filming.
Right. So if before we jump onto sort of other bits and pieces, say, and I know we nearly worked together on a period film, so I'll just put it to you like this. So if we were to work together, let's say on a World War II thing, and I said to you, right, Paul, I've got a key background unit of 10 guys. They're going to play World War II British paras. I'm going to give them to you for 5 days, but I want you to focus on stuff where they look like they know how to fight, or they will move in a unit as they would be in this situation or that situation. We haven't really got any scenes with them marching about. What would you spend that 5 days doing with those 10 guys? Just sort of talk me through that.
Well, to be honest, I've had more than 10. I would tell you to get over the quota, and I'd make them work to reach the end.
Right.
So the best 10 people would work them, because if you just have 10 guys, they all feel safe in the knowledge that, they're going to be at the end. You need to make sure, first of all, the first day is to make sure the guys are physically fit and they're switched on. There's no point just throwing 10 guys at you and going, can you train them? Because if one of them doesn't get it, one of them's slow, one of them's not paying attention, it buggers it up for the rest of the guys. So what I do is I do a selection process before any boot camps. I basically tell people you've got to earn yourself, you've got to earn the right to get onto my boot camps. And I do that on every job I'm on. No one just walks onto a boot camp. No one, no extra agency. And I know, and I'm good. I've got a good relationship with some of the main extra agencies. They know how I work, and they know that if a guy's rubbish, I'm not going to have him. If he's just going to jack on a run, when we do a few shuttle runs, I don't want him, because if you're shooting a scene, and for example, Fury, and there's about 20 of you, and you're all running behind a Sherman tank, and you've got to cover maybe 800 meters. If one of you is just unfit and just starts to walk, you've just buggered that shot up. So that's one of my things. First of all, I make sure the guys are physically and mentally robust. That will then lead on to being able to train those guys. Everyone should be at the same level. Everyone should be at the same fitness level. And then I'll train them which is specific to the roles, what's in the script. There's no point training them in every discipline that was, or, as in the pamphlet.
Right,
you train them what's relevant. And then you have a few little things up your sleeve as well to surprise the director. One of my little secrets.
So what, because obviously, how a unit, for example, nowadays, or even in, let's say, the era of Northern Ireland and Suez and so on, would be different from how a unit would have moved and fought in World War II. There's a lot of differences, right?
Well,
so you tailor it accordingly.
That the mindset of a soldier is always the same, whether you are a Roman centurion to a tier 1 special forces soldier, but it's just the kit and equipment. And so you move your tactics are dictated by that equipment, how you move, how you operate. So if it's World War One, you would hold your weapon a certain way. But first and foremost, whatever weapon it is, safety first. So the safety's taught. Weapon safety, weapon handling is the first lesson. Yeah. Some drill, some very basic drill is one of the first lessons.
Yeah.
Just holding a weapon, how to hold it correctly. In relation to the era, there's no point holding a musket like you're holding an M4. Because obviously if you hold a musket like an M4, which I saw one film do, Doolittle. The guys come running out holding muskets like this. I'm like,
okay.
That's something I can't stand, guys. At the low carry, it's something I can't stand in movies.
And, so the powder and the powder and the musket round's going to fall out the barrel when you hold it like that. But no, so it all depends on how you hold the weapon. Different degrees of speciality. So strike back, for example, we had different soldiers from different units. We had Americans, we had British, we had Australian, we had Russian, we had Israeli. So I need to make sure that I'm giving them specific training to how they should carry their weapon or how their character may carry their weapon. If we have a police officer and then we have a CTSFO, he may carry his sidearm differently to how the normal police officer will. So you tailor the training to what the character is. We can revert to 1917 when I trained the 2 actors. One actor, I gave him more experience. I gave him more training. The other one, I deliberately gave him less experience. And I was more lenient with him on certain things like his pouches and stuff like that, because I wanted to show that he was inexperienced, where Schofield had seen it and been to one battle already. And and that wanted them to show that in their acting. So there's
that's a good way of building in the character. I like that. Great attention.
Otherwise, if everyone's doing it the same, it's boring.
Well, I mean, and not all soldiers are the same. They're trained the same, but they don't all react the same way. And
there's different ways. Some guys are more nervous. Some guys are completely switched on and very focused. And so there's different ways. Some guys are shouty. Some guys are quiet and just calm. So
let me ask you this question, because this comes up a lot on forums and with the armchair Twitter generals, and I'm sure Robbie's going to know what I'm talking about. Would you agree that your average soldier in this era, especially, but I would argue also in World War II, although they've all got the same kit and whatever, people will personalise their kit?
Yes. It's. I mean, I've had discussions with people, reenactors. I mean, I get what reenactors do, but they go by a pamphlet. Oh, it's written in the pamphlet. Oh, it's not written in the pamphlet. A pamphlet's a guide. Okay, I had a pamphlet for the Milan anti-tank weapon. It's a guide. There's still ways you can circumnavigate certain rules, and exactly the same as it goes for your webbing. Your like 58 pattern webbing. I had a different sort of. I had 44 water bottle pouches on it. I had different bits and pieces on there. I personalised my webbing. Even as a parachute regiment soldier, I personalise my webbing. Soldiers sometimes will personalise their weapons. In I personalised my weapons. Before we had Picatinny rails, I personalised my personal weapon to have a laser and a light on it. Before we had that sort of kit, I can pull out loads of incidences where soldiers and commanders on the ground will personalise their tactics, their equipment, based on their experiences of what the enemy that they're up against. So, to all these armchair generals that say, oh, they never did it like that, and oh, the pamphlet doesn't say that, I say that to the pamphlet, because most of the time the pamphlet is simply a guide. And unless they've actually operated, they will never understand that.
No, that's a very good point, and one that I suspected was the case.
I don't think anyone in a movie sometimes wants to see cookie cutter people. They like seeing it. Like, that's one of the great things about like Vietnam films, when you get the writing on the helmets. And in the Aliens franchise, when the Colonial Marines were in it, they were encouraged to draw on their body armor and things like that. I think people enjoy seeing that in movies, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it a lot on jobs where I've put the ZAP numbers on there, and sometimes I've put my ZAP number on equipment that's been in the movie. So sometimes I leave a little Easter egg somewhere, something of myself, where my last 4, my ZAP number is actually on someone's equipment, or someone reads out a grid number and it's actually my last 4.
Well, we're going to have to look out for them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Napoleonic sort of stuff, and sticking with the historical stuff for now. Now, I know that you've recently worked on Napoleon with Ridley Scott, and that's all you can say about that. But it's fair to say you're excited, and we should be going to see that in the big screen. But you've already worked on some other epic shows that had pretty big battle scenes. Now, I'm one of the few people that watched the Catherine the Great show, because I don't think many people over here saw it. But I watched it. I really liked it. And I really liked the battle scene in Vanity Fair. That was the only reason I watched Vanity Fair, was to see that the stuff you did on there. So let's just take Vanity Fair for an example. How long did you have to train those guys? Because that was, the square formation. Was that Waterloo?
Yeah, that was Waterloo. So I had 5 days.
So you had 5 days to train how many guys?
250, I believe. No, 300, sorry, altogether, because we had French as well.
So this is 300 that come from
local lads, basically. We did an audition first.
Right.
Mainly local lads. So we done an audition in Reading, which is we were filming in Maple, Durham.
No, I've just been there the other day. Where they filmed the Eagles Landing.
Yeah, they filmed quite a few things there, mate. Where they filmed Taboo in Maple, Durham. They filmed that. The Wonka. But that's one thing I can say. But,
we can't talk about
it's a very popular area, so I've done a lot of filming there. But I suppose if you go back, when you talk about training and how long, War and Peace, which I done in 2014, I had 3 days' notice to learn the Napoleonic drill tactics for the French and the Russians, and then go out to Lithuania and train 500 extras in Napoleonic infantry and artillery drill. So that's how that was my learning curve.
This was 500 Lithuanian.
Yeah, 500 Lithuanians.
So you would have had a translator and
had a translator. Luckily, most of them knew, could speak English. The older ones couldn't.
Right.
But yeah, it was interesting.
Let me. Yeah, I was going to say I have to mute Robbie while his dog's got a bit of an upset tummy. Right. So that was 3 days, 500 guys. Vanity Fair was 5 days, 200.
I had 3 days notice. So basically, I got
3 days notice.
3 days notice to research, put a plan together, fly out there, and then train 500 guys.
Right.
And that was spread over a longer period. But the Vanity Fair, it was 5 days from the first day of boot camp until the last day of boot camp. And again, that's where I would do a selection process. I would give them homework. So we'd bring them in. and I'll teach them a drill movement, and I'll teach them the timings of the drill movement. And then I'd say, right, I want you to go home, and I want you to just keep on practicing that drill movement, calling out the time. So when we get to the first day of the boot camp, we're all on the same song sheet, and we can all hit the ground running. And so that's one of the methods of getting guys trained quickly. And
I mean, would you, like with Vanity Fair, for example, would you be on set during the filming of that sequence?
Yes, so I'm there. I'm sort of I'm with the director, and basically we're going through the planning. I'm giving them the ideas on how they can actually set the scenes. And I'll be giving notes on the script. I mean, military advising is not just training guys. It's not just being on there saying, "Oh, you wouldn't do it like this. You would do it like that." It goes right away from script advice, helping costume, like advising costume, advising special effects, advising props, advising armors, training stunts. You are helping every single department achieve their aim in any movie. But we're the only ones that never get recognised for it.
Well, you have now on our channel.
Yeah, of course. Is
this my award? Thank you very much.
Well, I'll try and come up with a better one than that.
Yeah.
Do you find it difficult sometimes to get and obviously I know you've been hired on to a shoot in the role of advisor, military advisor, but do you find it sometimes difficult to convey your point across to people who might not be from a historical background? Do you sometimes find that hard?
I mean, I'll always phrase things. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm an advisor. I'm only there. I can only advise. It's not my train set. Sometimes a director may want to take it. Sometimes he may not, because he may have a vision. At the end of the day, it's his canvas. He's got the paintbrush. I can only put some paint underneath and say, maybe do some there. But it's perfectly, it's up to him. And that's, I can't get upset about that. I mean, there's times when there is things I could be banging my head against the wall, but I know end of the day that I put myself in this position. And sometimes there's bad decisions made, and you can't do anything about it. You just have to grin and bear it, and remember it's a drama, not a documentary.
Well,
that's fair. I guess.
Yeah, that's
as much as you get, you basically you will try and get as close to reality as you can, and you will try and tweak things. The director might say blah 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 blah, and you're like, yeah, and then you can give him some notes and say, it looks really good, but you could do it if you did it like this. It may work exactly the same effect, but be more realistic. And I'd say 8 times out of 10 they will take my advice and try and run with it. But there's always going to be a director that just wants to do something his way, and he believes that's the way. And so there's something you can do about that. And sometimes there is some rationale behind it as well. Things have been explained to me by a director, and I can go, yeah, you know what, I get that. So it goes both ways.
Being a military man, I'm sure you've heard these 2 phrases, which I very much associate with kind of my morning of walking onto a set when I'm lucky enough to get to do that job. One of them is proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. Yeah. And then the second rule of filmmaking for me is no plan survives contact with the enemy. So what would be some of the worked with this plethora of different eras and different equipment and different complexities? Can you think of any incidents that you could share that might be interesting to hear about of unforeseen issues that came up that, oh shit, we didn't anticipate that, or that didn't quite work the way? Anything you
Not
can share?
Personally, no, because try to prep, and I always try and plan for every eventuality and for it going wrong. So plan to fail, which is basically goes, you always plan to fail and always have something. And as I said, you always have something up your sleeve to give the director. So you don't tell him everything, and then you say, well, what if he was to do this? War and Peace was a classic example. The director didn't know I trained all the French how to form square. So when in the scene, it doesn't say anything about them forming square. It just mentions about them all turning round. And I said, well, what about this then? And I just shouted, form square, reaction to cavalry. And all the guys just formed this square. And the director was like, Jesus, God, I didn't know you could do that. I'm like,
wow.
Yeah, well, there you go.
It's your round down the pub.
Yeah. The aim is always have something up your sleeve. Always
Nice.
plan to fail. Never be cocky. Never just think that, because the director can just the director may throw something at you, but end of the day, your job or one of your jobs is to provide military solutions. So it's not just advice. Provide a military solution. Don't provide a problem. Don't just say you can't do this or it wouldn't. Oh no, you shouldn't do that. Provide a solution around the problem, whatever it is the director wants. Find a solution that works and moves around it. So, there's never anything that's ever been thrown at me that's really fazed me or put me on the backside, because I'm always ready for it, which is, you trinque creatus, ready for anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very true. Very true.
With the Napoleonic stuff, before we move away from that, unless Robbie's got an additional question about that era particularly, what would you say is the biggest challenge of working in that era in the role that you do as opposed to the other eras?
Formations, big formations. You've got lots of guys that you've got to train to be able to work, operate as a body of men. They've all got, so if you're doing so there was on Vanity Fair, I trained the guys to do reverse wheeling. So there's a scene that, unfortunately, there was a lot in Vanity Fair that was cut simply because it was about the drama of the actress. So there was a lot out of. I remember James Strong saying, he goes, there was so much he didn't want to cut that he had to, and there was such a cool scene, and you just catch the end of it, and it's basically where a rider is going past on Waterloo. He's going to that particular square. And I trained one of the rear sections of the square to wheel out like opening a gate. And the horse comes in. And as the horse comes in, they reverse wheel back in to close the gate. And it was just like the money shot. I remember just looking at James Wade.
How many takes did you get on that?
We did it once.
Wow.
Right.
Literally once. They came out. It was timed perfectly. As soon as they come in, they went back in, closed the gate, and it was just perfect. So I mean that again, that's something up the sleeve.
Yeah.
He saw it, he loved it. And you just see the arse end of it as the horse is coming in. You can just see the guys starting to reverse wheel in. But yeah, so as far as Napoleonic stuff is concerned, the formations and also muskets. All muskets firing. Muskets are not great in damp weather.
No,
so that's not so much my headache. That's the armourer's headache. But it's again, it's firing, making sure guys are doing the correct drills at the same time, and not everyone should be spot on perfect as well. That's one other aspect. Yeah. You don't want everyone like they're on a parade square. Again, that wouldn't be realistic. But yeah, as far as the Napoleonic side is concerned, that's the big formations, forming a square, forming square into an attack column, from an attack column forming into line in their sections. So if you imagine you've got 500 people and you need everyone within their sections, and you've got to make sure you pick the corporals and the sergeants. So like for example, one certain film, I made sure that there was ex-forces who are sergeants and corporals who could control their sections. And so that they made sure that when they had to move into a formation, that they were controlling their guys, because realistically back then, the experienced were on the flanks and the new guys, the FNGs, were in the middle, looking at the experience because of the attrition of Napoleonic War. And they're the ones that would guide them in, along with a sergeant, maybe an officer. So it all worked perfectly. But yeah, that was the answer to that one.
Robbie, anything else on Napoleonic?
No, I think you might have answered it there, but do you find it difficult to train modern extras and actors up on muskets?
No.
No.
No, you start with the basics. So I'll go through the proper loading sequence, how you load a musket. So I go through that. I strip it bare. I've had it before where I've been on a production where they were going to use the Lithuanian army. They said, we're going to use the Lithuanian army. And I said, no, it's a bad idea. 2 reasons. First of all, they could get called up at any time. You could fit all those guys, invest in some training, and then all of a sudden they're called up, and they won't care. They'll just go. Then you're left with nothing. But most importantly, I always say it's best sometimes to start with a complete blank canvas when you train people, because if you've got a guy that's used to marching as a British soldier, he keeps on stamping his feet, he keeps on swinging his arms because of the muscle memory, and so he's holding his finger like rigid over the trigger. He's like, no, don't do that. That's not how they were taught. So sometimes you have to untrain the ex-soldiers to basically fall into that era.
Yeah, and you're replicating an era of conscripts as well. So in a way,
that's it. Yeah,
you're kind of going via a more historically accurate route if you just get.
That's why I always say, if you look at Napoleon, if you look at Waterloo, the 1977 one, I think it is, with Christopher.
Yeah,
Clark.
I've got the Blu-ray special edition of it in the other room.
Now it does look impressive, but all the soldiers are marching as Russian conscripts. They're not marching like the French. They're not firing their muskets. They're using Springfields, which is basically a repeater rifle. So they're not going through a loading process. They're not even holding. Some of them, you can see, some of them were holding their muskets incorrectly to how the French were taught to hold their muskets in the shoulder arms. It looks impressive, but you never see them form a square either. Not once do you ever see them form a square. They're already in the square.
Yeah.
Because it's a hard maneuver to do, and it's one of the hardest maneuvers to actually film and do it right and do it in a timely manner that you catch it on film and people are not bored while everyone's trying to get in line. So, that's something that I can't say anymore, but I'm very proud of on a certain thing.
Did you like the way they did it in the Four Feathers movie? Have you seen that, the one with Heath Ledger?
No, I haven't. No.
Definitely put that on your list, because it's a good
form in a
film,
square sequence, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really good sequence, worth watching just for that sequence alone. And I saw that at the Odeon Leicester Square, so it was proper.
I did different versions of forming it as well. So I had them forming square from line, I had them forming square from attack column. And forming square on the move while they're actually on the move in open attack column, in open column. So there was different ways that I had guys forming squares, different variations.
Let's talk about when you worked with Mike Leigh on Peterloo, which is also in the Napoleonic era. So before we move away from that period of history, I mean, somebody I've met a couple of times, including recently, where I bumped into him in the street in Leicester Square, and I just reminded him that I'd met him right at the beginning of my career. And I just wanted to say, just nice to see you again. And thank you for giving me that time back in 95 or whenever it was. And then he stopped me and asked me 20 questions. And I was conscious of his friends were wandering off down the street. Yeah. Really warm, just a person who's
really nice guy.
He's interested in, you and cares about you. And you don't get that from many people at his level.
He was a generally nice guy. I mean, we had a bit of banter going on when we was on set, when we was up in Tilbury Fort, where we was filming the scenes. And there was quite a funny scene. It was because he looks at things logically. How do you think this would have happened? And his style of filming it's all there. It's all in his head. So you're not necessarily always going by a call sheet and what's in that call sheet and what's contained in there. So we're going through how the riot logically could have started. Why did the British soldiers attack? Why did they go in there in the end? We had the militia that were drunk coming in from one end. What happened? And so we was literally drawing in the sand, and I didn't realise I had the historical advisor behind me. I didn't really know it that well. So I was looking at it logically with him, and I was saying, well, we could have some infantry who are blocking a street. We've got our cavalry that slowly move in. And because this is, I think it was 3 years after the Battle of Waterloo, the horses are not accustomed to the same amount of musket fire and cannon fire. And we get one of the soldiers that's told to fire a warning shot from his musket. That spooks a horse. That horse goes darting forward. That's when it all just goes Pete Tong. The line's broken, and then it goes mad from there. And he was like, yeah, logically, that sounds right. yeah, that sounds right. And I could hear the pages shuffling from this lady who was a historical advisor. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And then she went, that's exactly how it happened. And I was just like that. Yeah, boom, and that was it. It was so funny. It was just a funny moment. I remember having a chat, and he goes, oh, you'll be coming to the rap party, won't you? And I went, no, sorry, you'll be coming to the premiere, won't you? And I said, well, I very rarely get invited to the premiere because a military advisor normally gets forgotten. And he got his PA and says, make a note, Paul, premiere. And lo and behold, when it came out, I got a ticket, but I was on another job, so I couldn't go.
Well, that was, I mean, that's a very complex arrangement with a lot of extras, a lot of horses. And was there any additional safety things in place for a scene of that nature?
Yeah, so you got the armourers. Yeah, we had the Batchy armourers, who are, one of the best. Best bunch of guys out there. I've just finished working with them on a job. So you got the armourers that are there for safety. In conjunction with the armourers, I will provide the actual realistic training and the drill movements, and with them, and then with the stunt coordinator, we devised a plan like that. We trained the guys a few days prior in what drills they need to carry out, how to fire the muskets, made sure they was all safe with the muskets. And then we just put it all together, and it just, and we had a lot of stunt guys, a lot of stunties that were in the crowd, in the riot crowd, so they knew how to run. It didn't take long to coordinate.
But was there any unpredictability with the horses on the day, reacting to noise and that sort of thing that was difficult to manage?
What you tend to do is you tend to get the horses ready. I mean, the horses, I can't remember who supplied the horses. I think it might have been Steve Dent, I'm not sure. But all the horses, whether it's the Devil's Horseman or Steve Dent's, they're all, I mean, they'll fire a few musket rounds close to them to get them used to it. And it's the same with humans. When you fire something for the first time, you'll jolt. If you fire it a second time, you won't jolt, because there's a chemical in the brain that equalizes and gets used to that noise. Horses are always going to be unpredictable. They might decide to go left or right. But that's, and there's always some boundaries that you tell non-stunt guys, right? Don't go in this direction. Don't go in that direction, because we know that there's only one way this horse will go. Only stunt guys will go near there. Some of the, some of the crew for the horses will be there as well to grab the reins if need be. So I mean, it's all coordinated, and you put as much safety precautions in there as you can.
Yeah, I think for something like that, you've absolutely got to. Well, moving on from Napoleonics to World War One, although Cyrano's kind of before World War One, but we're going to talk about these together.
Before Napoleonic as well.
Yeah. So Cyrano with Peter Dinklage. First of all, much to my relief, you told me he's an absolutely fantastic bloke and lovely guy to work with.
Yeah.
Which I'm really pleased to hear, because I'm a huge fan of his. Robbie's just dealing with his dog, I think. What was your experience of working on the film? What did you have to do on that? That's not one I would typically say. I would expect to see your name on the credits for Cyrano de Bergerac.
Yeah. So I was on there at first. It was the battle, the battle set piece at the end of the movie. But there was a dance sequence, and Joe got me to one side and went, Paul, he said, they're soldiers. I want you to man them up a bit, because the dancing's lovely, but it's a bit too feminine for what they're supposed to be. So is there anything you could suggest to make it a bit more manly? So I'm like, right, okay. So I worked with the dance choreographer, and I came up with the beginning as a drill movement, and I got them doing various what we call continuity drill with the muskets, which is something that's not completely correct, but it looks, I mean, it's what the film is. They break into dance, There's not many barracks I know where guys break into dance. So we got them doing some continuity drill, and with the swords as well, some timings, some military timings to the sword and play. And then they break into dance, and that then goes over to the dance choreographer. And then they go back into a military drill and continuity drill again. So that was a piece in there. And every director keeps on trying to get me into uniform. And Joe wanted me to be this sergeant moving amongst them, which you see me briefly. I did it for one day. And I just said, look, I can't do it anymore because I can't do my job. I can't see the monitors. I try to, if I can, keep out of being in uniform.
Right.
Director's always trying to get me in it.
I'll bear that in mind.
Yeah. It was funny because someone said, "Oh, not many people say no to Joe," and I went, "Well, I did," and but he accepted it. You know, I said to him, "Look, I can't do my job. I can't see those monitors, and I've got costume and makeup hanging off me like fruit bats, trying to do this, that, and the other, and I'm trying to train guys. I can't do it." But yeah, that was that scene, and then we moved on to the battle at Mount Etna, and we'd wrecked Etna before it started snowing. And then first of all, everything was set in place. Then there was a snowstorm. We then had to bring the set down about 100 feet because it was the set had been snowed under. So they had to reset bring it all down into a different place from where we'd originally wrecked, which was good, a very good reason, because as we started driving up it early in the morning, it started erupting. You could see all the lava going up there, and I thought, early bath. I was like, no, we're filming. We've got to get this done. So we was on one side of Etna. You could hear the ground. You know, you could hear this roaring. You could see it from where we was at the first base. There's like a big car park there. I don't know if you've ever been up Etna. There's this big car park, lots of souvenir shops. It's probably covered in ash now. But yeah, and then we moved up, and we was just on the far side, so we were slightly covered by a hill. I got my drone up to try and capture it, and then I lost my drone because I couldn't see my drone, and I had all the extras coming up, so I had to press my navigational recall button and then wait for it to come back. But then we had about, I think it was like 150 men coordinated this battle, and then them singing and then marching off to war. That was
and you did some shots of this while it was erupting. You know, like director was like, "Fuck, that's a good effect." Roll camera, exploding volcano.
It's not, well, we was doing it away from there. He wasn't really interested in the volcano. It was just the area. It was, there was an active volcano on the other side, and we had the active Etna is full of little volcanoes, and there was some steam coming up from some others because it was at the start of when it was erupting. So it wasn't full on at the time, but obviously I've subsequently learned that set, maybe in 1,000 years' time, when someone goes up there, they're going to be digging up some bits of musket and bits of sort of period stuff, along with camera equipment and bits there. So they're going to be like, "What's going on here?"
That would be very confusing for the archaeologists. Was that the eruption in 2017? Is that the right one?
No. This was the one only, was it just over a year ago?
2021, February 2021.
Yeah. That's basically it's we finished. Yeah. No, sorry. So it was December 2020 when it started. Right. And then it just got worse and worse.
Right. Yeah. Closed all the airports. Closed all the airports on Sicily.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been to Sicily and did get to see Etna, but didn't go up it or anywhere too close. But beautiful island, though. Absolutely loved it. We
was there during lockdown. I was in Noto.
Right.
During lockdown, it was like there was nothing open. So you're filming, and then there was a curfew on and everything. So.
Right. Is that, and did you literally see all of the first lockdown out in Sicily?
Yeah.
Well, I can think of worse places to be.
Terrible, isn't it? Well, not all of the lockdown. I was doing work here, so we did I worked on the first movie in the UK that started working under the COVID protocols, which was Jurassic Park.
Right.
Which was due to come out. Yeah, so yeah, but it was like for Sicily, we got out there, and as we got out there, they went, "Oh yeah, they are locking everything down in Sicily." I'm like, jeez.
So let's talk about 1917, because I'm sure both me and Robbie have both got some questions we want to ask about that. Now,
Yeah.
my understanding is your main role was to facilitate the extras doing the massive charge out the trench.
No.
Was
My main
that-
role was to teach the two actors.
Oh, the two actors. But in addition to that, sorry, you did also do the guys. Yeah.
We had a
okay.
historical advisor, a guy called Andy Robert Shaw,
Yep.
Right.
who
I know him. Yeah. So, yeah.
supplied the brains
Right.
and the historical knowledge behind, the type of equipment they would have been issued and all that bits and pieces. And mine was the physical aspect and the training aspect and so on and so forth, and obviously the boot camps.
So in the context of that setup, that big trench setup, which is like near the end of the film, was the thinking story-wise? Because I mean, presumably you would have had some insight into this in your role working with Andy as well. Was that? I think my understanding in the story was that was supposed to be like the end of the line. This is the latest trench we've built, which is why there isn't wire and it's not surrounded by craters yet. And it was kind of, we're trying to outflank the enemy.
It's virgin territory. So
right.
a battalion plus has basically gone ahead more than what they should have done, and they've basically dug in, and the CO's basically going off his own initiative. That's what's behind it, and obviously they're trying to tell him to stop it, and that's why it's green fields. A lot of people think that World War II was just fought in mud. They don't realise that new lines were made, and that's the whole point of it. The Germans did actually withdraw. They withdrew past their lines, so there was going to be virgin territory. So that's the idea behind it. And there was I believe an American battalion that did fairly similar, where they advanced too far forward and they were completely cut off.
Yeah, that was the Argonne Forest in 1917.
So there's elements there that did happen. There's bits of history there that happened. There's bits of obviously history that didn't happen. There's certain locations where that wasn't really there, but it's part of the story at the end of the day.
Am I right in thinking that was a one-take wonder because of all the explosions and stuff that they had to do?
That scene was a one-take wonder, and they had 4 beds of explosives set in each point to do it 4 times.
So from period of here's your guys to we're going for action, what was the period of time that you had to work with those guys, work out who was going to move where and break them up into their little units?
So obviously we've done the boot camps, done exactly the same thing where we did an audition first in Salisbury in the where was it now? I think it was like the council hall or something, town hall. So we've done auditions first. And then once we've done the auditions, I did a selection process. And with the selection process, I had them going in, at the time, the historically accurate formations they would move into. So in their sections, moving in sections to their designated, I had designated areas. That's what would have, obviously I didn't do it for that scene, but I trained the guys to be able to move in sections to designated areas that would have been highlighted to them in a brief. And it was for me to see what they were like. So I did some drill, then we done the running about in sections, getting down, getting back up again, getting down, getting back up again, see who could keep on doing that, and then it would run back to number ones and then do it again. And then we conducted boot camps, again, weapons training, and then some tactics training. I then trained Lewis gun teams to act as proper Lewis gun teams. Obviously, unfortunately, it's a one shot, and you don't have time to feature on lots of guys as they get to the front line. And when he tactics, he just wanted them to bolt over, because the nature of it is the enemy were only 300 meters away, and obviously the officer thought he could just go for it. So that was it, really. So the training was very minimal. It wasn't as intense as Napoleonic training, because the tactics didn't, the tactics nothing to do with big formations. So that's it's an interesting. It was an interesting argument I had with a professor, historical professor, history professor, and he said about, and this is where we go back to the pamphlet. He said, "Oh yeah, the pamphlet they went in sections and they would have had Lewis guns in." I said, "Yeah, that's right. I trained them to that." But the movie required the guys to do that because that's the whole point of that section.
Right.
It's the whole point.
See, but that's one of the things I liked about that sequence in 1917 is that they did bolt forward, because there are certain regiments and certain sections of the line that did do that. I think it's hard for the viewing public when they've got such a, if you pardon the pun, an entrenched view. Sorry.
Hang on.
Sorry.
Yeah, keep on going. It's like the TV just.
And they've got such an entrenched view of how the Great War seems, that it's all mud, blood, men walking out in front of no man's land, that when you present something.
Keep going, Robbie.
Sorry, that when you present something that is against the grain, I think people just get in their heads of how it should be. And when you present them something different, you have to almost go to bat for the history. It's an interesting thing.
I put this historian on the back foot because he was trying to say, no, the pamphlet, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, guys, pamphlet is a guide. It's the commander on the ground that dictates how the tactics will go. If he decides that pamphlet didn't work the last time he used it, he's going to try and do something himself. And there is a very famous story, and you may have heard of it, when a certain battalion, a company commander came up with an idea of issuing a football to each section within his company. And then when the whistle was to blow, they were told that each section was to kick their football over the top. And then they were to move, not run, but to move towards their football, their section football. And once they get to that section football, they was to kick it forward again. Not hoof it, but just kick it a couple of meters away. And then do it again. And I could see this guy he could see in the back of his mind, he knew exactly what I was going to say. And I said, now, on 1917, when Schofield starts running, if you saw a load of footballs go on the whistle blow and a load of footballs went over, probably 90% of people will be shouting, that's ridiculous. But you know that actually happened.
Right.
And he just went, I said, exactly. I said, because a commander on the ground thought this is a way of taking the guys' minds off what's about to come.
And again, it's a film, and if you want to do a documentary, do a documentary. If you're trying to do a piece of entertainment, which these movies are at the end of the day, you have to get the rough and the smooth. You have to. Yeah,
the thing is, it'd be very boring, if you just did it like spot on and everyone was talking, Sam Mendes came out with a brilliant saying, where, as a reaction to some of the people going, oh, this is not good. He's made that movie for millions, not for the two guys sat there trying to pick holes in everything. He's made the movie for millions. And obviously it worked. It made it for millions.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed it. It has to be said. I thought it was a superb film. Were you on the Scottish shoot for that as well? Did you go up to Scotland?
No, what I'd done is I sent one of my guys out there because I had to go out to Croatia and train the strike back crew for the Croatian strike back. So it was only 2 weeks. So I sent one of my guys, Julian. I sent him up there. I said, right, all you got to do, make sure because there's nothing. It was mainly stunts more than anything else.
Yeah,
for the Scottish side of it.
It's the whole scene at night time.
Oh no! The nighttime scene was done in the back lot. That was the last part of the shoot. So
I thought that was shot in the old docks in Scotland somewhere.
No. The night. No, what happens is obviously the bit that's shot is where he's going over the bridge.
Right.
Before it gets to the night, obviously he moves towards a sniper. So he's going over the bridge. There's also we did that bit. And then they went. So they spent about a week in Scotland. Then it was a week in Tyneside. I think I can't remember it was now Tyneside.
Yeah, it's like one of the main old docking.
Yeah, so all the waterworks.
Yeah.
There. And obviously getting off when you got off the 4-tonner, and then moves to the bridge. That was done in Scotland.
Right.
All the night work was done in the back lot of Shepperton.
Wow. Well, that's
Leigh,
interesting.
yeah, Shepperton. Because the back lot is where I was originally training the two main casts, and we went to Salisbury, did all the stuff. So we went to Bovingdon, went to Salisbury. By the time we came back, the back lot, all that burnt out village, bombed out village was all being built.
Right.
Did you find it harder to train the two actors in their movement and the drill and things, everything they had to do, because of the nature of the single shot of the way the movie was done? Any difficulties there? No,
nothing at all really. Again, I told them one of the main things, and I think that was forgotten until I brought it out with production, is I taught them how to look after their feet, and they didn't even think about it. And I said, look, I taught them how to look for, first of all, identify hotspots. So you've got to wear your boots throughout the training. You've got to wear your boots all the time. I want you to identify hotspots. So where the leather starts rubbing against certain parts, because everyone's feet are different. So when the leather starts rubbing against, I want you then to take those up. I want you to take them up. I want you to rub soap inside your socks. I want you to have dry socks. I want you to powder your feet. And you have it, it's a regime. You've got to do it every time. After a take, get the wet socks off. Even if they're not wet, put fresh socks on, put fresh talc on. Because if you get a blister, and they're moving through muddy, muddy fields, real muddy fields, and they're getting muddier and muddier. And your feet get wet and they get sore. The sores will then become infected. You then can't do your job. As a soldier can't do his job, and one of the main combat injuries was trench foot.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I relayed that into the filming side of it. You get blisters, they get infected because they're wet constantly, because you've not looked after your feet. As I've taught you, you won't be able to do your job. And on a $100 million budget movie, people are going to want to know why you didn't look after your feet. And everyone's going to go, what did the military advisor not teach you how to look after your feet? So without even them asking me, I taught that was the first lesson I gave them. Foot care, trench foot, how it can happen, how to identify things early, and how to prevent it from happening so they could do their job. And also, even with the webbing as well, look for any hot spots. So put some zinc oxide tape on your back, on your shoulders, anywhere that's going to rub, that's going to cause you or can affect your performance. And then their training was tailored to their characters. Schofield had already been, he'd already witnessed the Somme. So I wanted him to be more confident. Blake, fresh out of training, a bit cocky. He's had training. He's all like, but if you watch the scene just before they go over the trench, they get issued the fairy pistol. Watch Schofield. He's very confident. He gets the bayonet on. He clicks it on. Gives it one pull just to make sure it's on, and that's it. He makes sure his pouches are done once. He's ready to go. Then you see Blake. He's like this. He's touching his bayonet. He's touching his pouches. He's not sure of his kit because this is the first time he's actually used it in battle in the real, or for the real thing. You constantly see him plugging on his bayonet to make sure it's on again. He's touching his pouches again. So and that's what I taught him. I said, I want you to keep on doing that. I want you to be nervous, not sure of your kit. And with Schofield, you know it. And I don't even want you to look down. I was teaching him when he was loading. When he's reloading, don't look down. You're doing it naturally. When you do your pouches, I don't want you to look at your pouches. I want you to just button it and done. That's it.
Yep.
I think that level of detail is, it's not necessarily the sort of thing you might notice first time, but it's a layer in a film that makes a real difference between, a so-so production and an excellent one. And I think it reflects on screen. So, it's great to know that you bring that level of detail to the job and to the cast. And I think that's a real credit to you.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question here from somebody watching. Ollie Hollingdale's here again. He's an indie filmmaker. Any favourite pinch yourself moments on set, whether meeting an actor or a kick-ass scene? You got an anecdote that might fit that bill?
When I got inside the X-Wing fighter, dressed as an X-Wing fighter pilot.
What was that? What was that on?
The Force Awakens.
Oh, really?
I was I was originally put down to be an advisor for it, but unfortunately I wasn't well known enough. And the second at the time was a second guy called Fraser Fennell Ball, I'm good friends with.
Right.
He said, look, sorry, mate. He said, look, I'll put you forward, but I'm not powerful enough. And and this guy is known by some other people. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah. I was a bit disappointed. But he goes, look, is there anything I could, do you want? I said, yeah, I want to be an X-Wing fighter pilot. So, so I literally was up in Greenham Common. Millennium Vulcan was there. Han Solo and Chewbacca were having a chat. And the director was setting up. And I was just loitering around the X-Wing. And then I heard him say, oh, we need someone to get in that. And before he'd said actually X-Wing, my foot was over the cockpit and I was down on that. And that was like, there's these two green buttons, and on action all I had to do is hit these green buttons, and then the canopy goes ooh, like that.
Oh, wicked.
I'm here, I am flying. There's Han Solo, Millennium Vulcan. I can see all that. Yeah, that was a but no, I mean, a lot of pinch. There's lots more than I'd be going on for ages. Some of the pinch moments.
So give us one other one.
Oh, well, I mean, watching that trench scene from 1917, I can't lie. It was, and also Strike Back season 7, which was a one shot in a Malaysian village, proper village, and we did a one shot, and Bill Eagles was the director, and we did a recce for it. We then rehearsed it. I did all the running around, rehearsing how we were going to move around. Actors came on, Warren Brown and Dan McPherson, and we went through it once with them, and then we smashed it, and credit to them. But obviously, I trained them, I really punished them with the training, and to watch that, and I've got this thing where I don't give actors, I deliberately don't give them credit. I don't go, oh, you were wonderful, you were great. I never do that. I got some levels, and it's Dogshit, good, and then airborne. If you reach airborne,
okay, cool.
And I'd have actors coming up to me saying, "Oh, was that airborne, Paul? Was that airborne?" I'm like, "No, it's not airborne."
No.
It's like the dog in the treat. They want the airborne. It's clever.
Yeah. So I think Jamie Bamber was saying he was going on about it once, saying about, oh yeah, he never gave us airborne status. But yeah, so there's a lot. And what happened is we filmed that scene, and Warren Brown caught me walking out of the village, the video village. I was sort of like that, saying yes, and he caught me and went, "Yeah, that was good, wasn't it?" And I went, "Yeah, it was. That was good." So yeah, that was a scene I'm very proud of. I like watching that scene over and over because everything was on point. Their weapon handling, their covering movements, the whole shebang. So that was good. But yeah, there's so many memories I've got from different things I've seen and done, and there's stuff that's I can't talk about at the moment, which was films I watched as a kid that I'm now working on, and they're
yeah, I feel you.
And when you're seeing those characters, and you're sort of like, wow, I'm now working on this stuff, So yeah, it's a lot of pinch myself moments.
Let's move to a different period of history and talk about the Suez sequence you did for The Crown, and also The Last Post, which is a series set in the same era. I believe you said that your father jumped into Suez. Is that right?
Yeah. So I got told about they were doing a Suez scene for The Crown, and I spoke to a friend of mine, and I said, I want to coordinate that parachute scene. My father jumped at Suez with free para in 1956, so it was very important to me. My dad's dead, and I really wanted to get that right, not only for my father but for the regiment. It's part of a regimental history. So I asked to do some prep, but in their infinite wisdom, they thought they didn't need to do any prep, and I turned up. There was no static lines on the parachutes. There was no equipment bundles.
Sorry, and this is for a real jump, was it?
No. This was just for a stage jump out of a Dakota, but they had
so that's the sequence where the like the stick is jumping out. So that was basically a studio.
That was a studio.
Okay.
Blue screen out of a Dakota.
Yeah.
But
it was all hooked up wrong, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but they hadn't prepped it.
Right.
And I remember the guy was trying to tell me that, oh yeah, when they jump, he didn't realise I was a military advisor at the time. I remember him saying, oh yeah, when they jump, they just jump out and then they throw their kit. And I was like, no, they don't. He's like, yeah, they do. Yeah, they just throw their packs and they jump after it. I said, no, they don't. What I said, been a paratrooper for 24 years. I used to work at a parachute school. Said my father jumped in Suez. Said they use containers that's on a 15-foot suspension rope, which is attached to your lower D ring. Oh, so then I had actually I had not very long, and the director was the same director on Catherine the Great. And at first I think he was being a bit impatient with me. He was like, oh, he does realise this is a drama, and I literally turned around and said, yeah, I do, but my dad jumped on this and I want to make sure it's right, not looking ridiculous. So
and it's also a historical drama. It's not a fucking It's not a
I made static lines, piece. I made equipment bundles out of next to nothing to make it look at least realistic as I could. I trained the guys how to stack, how to fit equipment, how to action stations. I brought a dispatcher's suit with me, an RAF dispatcher's suit, because I thought, I bet you they don't have a dispatcher. So I went to the museum at Bryce, spoke to one of my mates, got a dispatcher's uniform out, and first thing I said, right, who's a dispatcher? And they all looked at me. I went, you're now a dispatcher. So I trained him how to dispatch. They just didn't think of any of these things. They thought the guys just jumped out on their own, as soon as they saw a green light. Put it all together in a very short period of time, and I was quite happy. I would have liked to have more time, but the overall effect was really good. I was sat right at the back. They had a big fan going. They opened the door. You get the blaster there, very similar to when you're in a C-130 when the door opens. And I've jumped Dakota as well, so I know how it's got a little door to jump out, especially for my size. And I got the goosebumps because I was just like, my dad did this as a young paratrooper, and here I am coordinating that very jump for a historical drama.
Was it one of your guys from your company? Was the guy on the door that was? No, he was a stunty, so I trained him. He was great. I remember him, and he was really looked the part.
Yeah, I basically got him in the suit, and I trained him in the drills of a dispatcher, how they actually dispatch the guys, action stations, all the bits and pieces, getting the first guy to the door, having his arm on there, getting ready to whack it away, and then bash him out as soon as the green light goes on. So everything I did as much as I could to get it as right as I could. And so considering I only had about probably 45 minutes to put all that together, train the guys, train the PGI, put the bundles together, get the static lines made up and all that bits and pieces. And on the basis of that, the director was obviously very happy because then he wanted me to do Catherine the Great for him about 2 years later.
That's great.
Yeah,
it's testament as well, because we talk about this on our podcast. We say, these I won't say smaller conflicts, smaller actions, but anything post 1945 just sometimes doesn't get its chance to be on the big screen or the small screen. It's on Netflix, but to have someone like yourself who was involved in that and made it 100% the best it could be is really important, because anyone seeing that now, they might not remember it the next day, but at least when they watch it in your own mind, you've made that as accurate as it can be.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really important when we tackle history on movies and TVs, that we get it bang on as much as we can, because we owe it to people who jumped.
There's lots of little wars, lots of stuff that was going on, some real good stories that could be told, especially
I'm waiting for the Plumber Mapu in
Malaysia.
I'm waiting for that.
There's so many different stories that could be told that would make some of these modern action movies look fairly tame.
Did you ever meet Mad Mike Hoare on your travels?
No, I never met him.
Okay, I was just curious. I was thinking of the Wild Geese
But I'd love to do a Wild Geese.
They've been making it, aren't they?
They've been talking about remaking it. I personally don't think they should do a remake. I think they should do a story about Richard Harris's Rafer's son. It should be Rafer's son now, and something happens with him, and then it should be, maybe some of the kids of some of the other characters. Because I don't want to see that film remade, but continue it somehow in the timeline.
I don't think you could remake the film. Different sort of era, different mindset. I think you would ruin it if you tried to make that particular movie work. And you'd never get the appropriate cast, because it's about a load of guys that are past their prime, going on a mission because they all need the money. And they kind of miss the camaraderie. That's the heart of the story. That's been happening in Iraq and Afghan for quite a few years now. That's the cash.
That's what I think. If they did a spiritual sequel, I think they will set it in the Middle East. I think they'll modernise it.
And there probably aren't too many. It wouldn't be too far from the truth. I mean, all the stories that came out of Afghanistan during that fuck up. I mean. And you really felt for the military that were out there, especially in the last month.
Definitely.
Just sort of, it reminded me of that line from An Ungentlemanly Act. No point arguing about who put us in the sticky stuff. We're in fathoms of it, and we just got to sort it out. And it's just like, from Bob Peck, wasn't it? The last post that you worked on, that was same era. Now, am I right in thinking that's the show where there's that real event from history where there's the group of engineers working in the truck pool, eating their sandwiches and whatnot, and then when the characters come by again, they've all been murdered. And
what happened with the last post. I went out there to train the cast. I went out to South Africa to train them, and I went out there to train them, and they wanted me to be there for just 2 days of filming, 6-month drama about the military.
Yeah, it's quite a big show, that.
Yeah,
if I remember rightly.
They hadn't factored in or budgeted in having an advisor on set throughout that. So I trained the cast, put them for a 2-week boot camp, trained the extras. I had 2 days just to train extras. And then they just relied on a local guy as their advisor to save money. And unfortunately, I'll be bluntly honest, they got so much wrong. It was unbelievable. I actually said I didn't want a credit on it.
Oh, wow.
Actually, you know what? I'm getting my scenes mixed up. Yeah, because the last post was about the Aden crisis, wasn't it? It wasn't Suez.
Yeah. That's when I wrote a blog called "Who Was the Military Advisor" on that, a bit of a tongue-in-cheek blog about the pitfalls of being a military advisor, because he gets the blame for everything, even when he's not even there.
Right.
I wasn't happy about the way that went, because I just said, look, you've got a 6-month show about the British Army. You don't have a dedicated military advisor. You are relying on a historian who wrote a book about Aden that had never been in the army before. Some of his information was wrong. I came on board and I was trying to correct as much as I could. But I just I politely said, look, I really don't want a credit on this. They gave me a credit as a boot camp trainer, but that's it. I didn't want a credit as a military advisor on the actual show, because I knew I get it wrong. And they never got a second season, which is what they were hoping for.
It wasn't great. No. I was bored by episode 5.
And I was having to say, look, this is wrong and that is wrong. And this is not just a case of me being belligerent and just me. I was saying this is so badly wrong. I'm only here for 2 days. And people were panicking, and the actors were actually panicking. They were like, we don't want him to go. But unfortunately, when you budget for something, thinking that you've got it in the bag and thinking, oh, yeah, this guy's given us all this information, when actually he hasn't, and it's too late. So, one of those things. So,
Did you do the street battle sequence on the Suez episode of The Crown?
No, I didn't.
So you just did that
in South Africa. No, that was done in South Africa.
Right. I
Mine was just a jump. I just did the jump.
Just the jump. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Robbie, anything else to ask on those two topics before we move on?
No, it's great.
We haven't got too much time left. Sorry, Paul. No, I don't like to go over 90 minutes, but if you've got to go at any point, just let us know.
That's fine. That's fine.
So let's move into the sort of realms of fiction and sci-fi. You worked on Foundation, which I've got to say I quite enjoyed that show. I'm not familiar with the books. It's based on a thing by Isaac Asimov, if it's the one I'm thinking of. It had this real epic feel, and different factions in this massive universal world. And I have to admit, I found it quite hard to follow at times. There was a lot of characters, a lot going on, but I did like it. I enjoyed it. Watched it twice to sort of follow it. Did you see it, Rob, at all? Foundation?
No, I didn't know.
I mean, I know you're not a massive sci-fi guy. It might not be your bag, but
there you go. Paul didn't see it either.
I've got a few sci-fi knickknacks behind me as well as the Tiger Tank. So
just a few,
just a few. Yeah, they were all in the shed until I decided to run a YouTube channel, and now they're all crammed in.
Out of the three, it's Pennyworth, I think. So I remember seeing the trailers for it, and I remember seeing a Daimler Ferret scout car go through the thing, and I was like, "What's a scout car doing something about Batman?" And I think that's as far as I got there with that one.
Mate, there's lots of MP40s firing in Pennyworth. You'll love it.
Alternate reality. That's why Beefeaters have got Tommy guns as well.
Okay. I might have to check it out then. I
really enjoyed Pennyworth, not least because Jason Fleming was in it. Were you in any of the stuff that shot in King's Cross? Were you?
No, most of my stuff was when they was in the jungle. When they were doing the flashbacks.
Right, the flashbacks, yeah. Okay.
So, when they were doing stuff in the jungle, we did the funeral scene. And there was a few bits and pieces. Then on season 2, I did bits and pieces on there. But it was not a lot. It weren't massive amounts of military for us.
So what did you do on Foundation?
So on Foundation, I got flown into Ireland to Troy Studios. And they wanted me to train the soldiers because of the armor they've got on them. And so what I've done is I studied the armor, I looked at it, and then devised a drill system that would work because it was quite hard to move around in. That's why stormtroopers never hit their target. So I trained these guys to be able to maneuver around their kit. So I put elements of Roman drill, elements of Napoleonic drill, elements of US World War II drill, and some modern drill in how they marched, how they controlled their weapons, and how they moved with those weapons. So it was a unique drill that I devised to make them look different. And that was the I forgot the name of the guards now. The coalition. I can't remember the name. No, I can't remember the name of it.
It's one of the factions.
Cohort guards. Right. So I made it so it was unique to them. So they didn't just look like soldiers just doing such and such, the same as any other soldier. But that was an interesting, the setups up in Troy Studio were quite impressive. Moving around some of the spaceships and playing around with them, being a big kid as normal. It was interesting.
Oh man, I love your job. So I mean, Invasion, and now again, I might be getting my shows mixed up, but was that the one that's the French co-production and
no
mixture of civilians and soldiers?
It was a different one. There's two. There was the Apple Invasion,
right?
In fact, no. Is it no? There's Invasion season 2, which is where they're going down. Can't say much anyway. So season 1, which we did. Season 1, which was. It was all over the place. It was in Japan. It was in the States. But no, I don't think that was the French one.
But you were presumably in that. It was military units on Earth battling alien forces. Is
Yeah,
that
it was
it? Yeah.
mainly the SEAL guy who was detached. He'd just come back from operations, and his flight got diverted to the UK, and then he got linked up with this kid who's got special powers, and he's fighting his way out. So my job mainly was training him, making sure he was holding his weapon correctly, moving correctly like an operator. So that was really the scope of my involvement with that, and there was some stuff with some soldiers involved as well, some RAF regiment, making sure that they were doing what RAF regiment normally do.
Sorry,
I'll say no more.
Yeah, okay.
That's very
a
good.
a bit of an inter-regimental rivalry.
Actually, it was quite funny when it was on behind the scenes on Cyrano, and I was being interviewed when I was up Mount Etna. So it was snowing. You could hear Mount Etna going off in the background, and the interviewer was saying, "So Joe was really impressed with how you turned something so feminine, manly into manly. You know, started it off as being really manly, and it went to feminine again, and then manly again. So how did you achieve that?" And I just couldn't help getting it in. I said, "Well, having worked with the Royal Marines, it was quite easy knowing what the feminine side's like. So I made it manly, put a bit of power edge on either side, and that was it." So I had to get that in.
Always a para, I guess.
Yeah.
But let's hope you don't bump into a group of them on a drunken night out.
Oh, I've bumped into many of them.
Yeah, Robbie, you got any questions on those on the
No, if I'm completely honest, I haven't seen any of them.
No,
really.
I didn't think they'd be your. I mean, let's look at some other TV stuff: Fortitude, Lucky Man, and Taboo. I mean, they're all quite different shows.
Those three shows were when I was doing more armory work. That's when I was, to be honest, that's when I was finding my feet. I was doing army work, but it was a good way, because obviously you don't just get into it like that. I mean, I get calls every day. I get emails, I get PMs, DMs from soldiers saying, "I want to do what you do. How do I do it?" And my advice always is that, you need to get some experience first. You need to walk before you can run. Don't think you can just do one job and then all of a sudden it's just going to come to you. The phone's going to keep on ringing. It takes time. It takes patience. And so what I've done to fill the gap in between, because now I'm flat out, but when I was first starting, there was a bit here, and then a bit there, and then a bit here. So it was drip feeding. I was asked to do some advice on one of the Mission Impossible scenes. In fact, I did 2 scenes on Mission. I think it was Mission Impossible 5, which was advising jobs, and then I do a little bit on Death of Stalin. And so, but in between there's gaps. And so if I was doing, maybe I might do a bit of surveillance work. And if I wasn't doing some surveillance work, then I'd speak to my mate and say, "Look, is any army work going?" Because that way it keeps my foot in the door, it keeps my face there with various departments, and it also keeps me current on weapons. So it served the purpose. So Taboo, Lucky Man, and Lucky Man, Taboo I gave some advice on. Lucky Man I gave some advice on as well. For the armed police. On Taboo, I gave some advice to Tom Hardy. I met his old man, Chips, who I had conversations with, and actually it was Chips that gave me advice on how to put my show reel together.
I directed Chips's play called Blue on Blue about a soldier coming back with PTSD, and so I know him.
Yeah, he's a real nice guy. He's always got time to speak to people and offer advice. So he sent me an email out of the blue and just said, "Paul, I've been following you. Well done, mate." He says, "You've really, really nailed it." I was like, "Oh, thanks. Yeah, very nice." He didn't need to do that. So that's basically what I've done on those. Fortitude, that was mainly armory work, but there was always, every time I was always asked to do the odd bit of advising, because there's some people that knew that I knew what I was talking about.
Right. Fair enough. What Fortitude, was that an armourer's gig as well?
Yeah, Fortitude, that was an armourer's. Yeah, that was just pistol work, really. I think, no, in fact, wrong. I'll tell a lie. There was a few Russian weapons as well. I think a few AKs, I believe. But he's actually interested on Taboo. I was giving Tom advice on how someone would be when they're having a fit, because as you probably know, my youngest son has cerebral palsy. Chandler.
Yeah, you did tell me that actually, but I thank you for reminding me.
So he got meningitis when he was 2 months old. So he's 22 now. But sometimes you can get very angry and the fingers can stiff up and contort. So I was teaching Tom, like, look, this is what happens to my son, and he was really taking it in. So so I gave him advice based on my experience with Chandler. So it's not always military advice that I'm asked to give.
No, fair enough. No, well, it's always good to be able to jump into different departments, especially in this day and age when you never know where the next paycheck's coming from. Let's talk about the time that you trained the battalion of Oompa Loompas to attack Charlie's house in the new. No, you got a load of. You're trying
to peel the orange there. It's just not happening, Lance.
No, so this is some of the stuff that Paul's worked on in the near past. We've got the new Jurassic World film coming out, Indiana Jones, Palomino, and Wonka. I know Wonka's TV show. I can't imagine why they would want a military advisor on Wonka, but I guess you can't talk about it because it's not out yet.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. So
we'll find out, won't we? I guess.
Were they all?
It's called resistance to interrogation training.
Yeah, but that's some of the stuff that you've got coming out next. Which one of those are you most excited to see, would you say? Because I guess you never know how they're going to turn out, really, do you?
No, I think Indy 5 will be quite interesting.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that one.
Yeah, obviously it goes without saying the last one I've just wrapped from will most definitely will be. Yes. But no, they're all good in their own right. But to be honest, most of the time I don't get a chance to see them anyway because
you're always working.
I'm just constantly working. So I basically come from once I finish this job, I finish this section of the job. Sorry, so on this job I'm finishing training for that block. I get 3 days home, so I'll get back to the UK on Friday, and then Tuesday I fly out to Turkey to do a feature there.
You've got a sort of a company now, right? So you employ a few guys. So it's not just you.
I train. Like I say, lots of people ask me, and I tell them, okay, I want you to get a few jobs as an extra. I want you to learn, like I did, from the grassroots, understand what it's like being right at the bottom. So then you can appreciate when you're training guys, especially extras, that they are human beings, because unfortunately, some of them are not treated correctly. They're not told anything. They don't know what's going on. And I like, if I can, as best as I can, to let the guys know what's going on. Have some humour with them. Treat them as they should be, part of a team. They are, without doubt, the people that make the movie, because without them, you've got a blank canvas with just two people in the middle. And that's what I always tell them.
Well, actually, one of my golden rules on set is if I've got a big day with a lot of background, at lunch, I always go and sit and eat with them. And in Hollywood, in Hollywood, the directors don't do that, but I'll go and sit with the extras and just sort of chat to them, and because usually they're on the least pay. So
I won't eat until they've eaten.
Right.
I remember I did it on War and Peace, 500 of them, and I just stood there, and they were all like, "Go." I said, "No, I'm not going to eat until every one of you has eaten."
Right.
So, the better shoots I've been on is where you feel like you're part of the team, even if you're an extra, because sometimes you just feel, "Oh, I'm just there. I'm just here." You can just feel like you're just there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And when they bring you in, it just makes you feel like you're part of it, because I think sometimes people can forget every extra that's there. There's that dream of becoming something more, and I think it gets forgotten about.
And that's the thing, I suppose, on the jobs I've got, and I know there's lots of guys that would be able to testify to it. I got the best out of them because I did as much as I could to make them feel part of that team, and did it with we did it with humour. We had a good laugh, we had a good joke, and it's always good when the feedback from guys are getting in touch with you saying, "I loved it so much, I really enjoyed it." And some guys have got in touch with me and said, "I've joined the army because of you." And I'm like, okay. There used to be a time you used to get a bounty for every guy you got to join the army, so I should be claiming some bounty, I think, from the recruitment office.
Keep that in mind.
And it's good. I mean, like I say, I train the guys, and I've sort of become. I won, which I didn't expect, which was the Armed Forces the Service Leavers Veteran of the Year Award in December, just gone. Because I employ veterans, I'm getting veterans into this industry, and helping them find a different career, because people do, veterans do find it hard. I've managed to have a lot of amputees on set, got them involved in stuff. There's that other aspect of it as well. And when I was on the last job, I was spotting talent, potential that could come onto my team, and shadow me, see how I work, because everyone that works for me has to work to my standards. I've got fairly strict standards. If your integrity is lacking, or if I feel there's anything out of place, you don't work for me again. It's as simple as that. And some people have found that out.
Not making this question specific to Jurassic World. I mean, we could parallel it to maybe Foundation. Do you find if you've got to do a job, you're getting your guys to move correctly and all the rest of it, but the set is predominantly a green screen, is that harder to do, easier? Is no different, or?
No, I don't find it any different. You work out exactly where things are supposed to be. You talk to the director gives you an idea. You let the guys know what the eye line is. You give them a scenario, and then you get them to act. As long as they're doing the drills correctly, as long as they're moving in formation, and that means stunts as well, not just the extras. I did some very big green screen stuff on a fairly modern movie that we filmed last year. It went like a flash. I won't say any more than
that. Okay.
Nice one there. Yeah, sprinkle that in. Yeah, good.
I see what you did there. Yeah. Let's talk about the most historically accurate thing of all time that you've ever worked on, Sniper Elite 5. So this is a video game. I think you've worked on more than one. This is one of Robbie's favourites. He's
it's the first video game.
Currently playing it. Yeah,
currently
came
playing
out last week, I think. Yeah,
and I will be playing it by the end of this week, because I'm going to order it as soon as I get off this thing, because I thought it was only on a PC. And me
it's
and
on
Robbie...
Game Pass, actually. You can play it through the Game Pass. That's what I put it on.
Oh, there we go. Paul, what did you do on it? Tell us about that, and how did you get that job as well? What happened?
Right, so a friend of mine, it was actually Andy Robert Shaw, who was the historical advisor on 1917. And he belled me and said, Paul, look, they want some advice for World War II, because Andy predominantly does World War One. And they need this guy. He was a friend. He had a friend at Rebellion, and just said, could you help out with it? And I said, yeah, no problems. So I went over there, met the producers, and they said, oh, look, we're really interested in some mission ideas for the next Sniper Elite, some mission scenarios, and maybe you could give us some ideas about some weapon loadouts that would fit in with the era and be realistic as much as possible. Obviously, there's going to be some embellishment. So I started off like that. And I gave them the ideas, for example, Hitler's toilet. And then I basically pushed him in the director of Bruce Compton, who I knew had Hitler's toilet. And I knew he had lots of military vehicles that they could photo render. Then they asked me if I could train the motion capture artists. So I went to Audio Motion, which is just around the corner from me. This was during the pandemic, but it was just around the corner. So then I started training this motion capture artist, and the two head guys of Rebellion were watching while I was doing this. And I could see them like clocking me, and I'm like, I've not done this before, so I thought, right, am I doing this wrong? And every now and again, you could hear him talking, and then looking at me again. And I just carried on doing what I was doing. And then at the end of the session, I just walked up to him and went, all right, everything good? And he says, yeah, could you come with us? So I thought maybe they're not happy. And they said, we'd like to commission you to be the character because you move naturally. It's how you move. You're training the guy well, but it's you. It's just how you move. You are Cole. So I said, okay, then give me 2 weeks so I can get on a running machine. And because if I've got to get on one of those suits, I want to make sure I look good. So so that's basically how it came about. And then on top of that, because obviously the
what happened to the other guy who got the gig ready and you were training him?
He did the old some of the stuff like climbing up the walls when he's doing the old.
So he still had a job. You didn't talk him out of a job then.
He was mainly doing a bit of the gymnastic stuff. Yeah, I'm 53, so I'm not going to go doing the sliding stuff. But as far as all the stealth, moving at stealth, moving around cover, jumping over, pole vaulting over walls and things like that, that was myself. And my son was the German because obviously you needed to work in bubbles. So I got my son, Corbin. He's my fourth in line to the throne. And he became a German. So he got paid to be beaten up by his dad. So I cut his throat.
That's incredible.
Knocked him out, threw him over walls. He was loving it. I said, well,
I wonder how many people know when you instigate the animation of that it's a father and son fighting. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you see, he's right next to me. If you see the trailer for it, they show it's on YouTube.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, you see him. He's in the green. You can tell he's got a great big conch on him.
Hang on, I'm gonna see if I can grab that now, and we can do a quick conch comparison.
So, just a quick question, Paul. Who decided there was going to be a SREM 1 in it? Because that is such an obscure rifle. Did you have anything to do with that? Because it's such a nice little inclusion.
No, that would be the Royal Armouries.
Okay.
They went to the Royal Armouries and then they went through all the different weapons. Mainly my stuff, I was teaching them the hand-to-hand combats, not the stealth, and also giving them ideas on hand-to-hand combat, which was used, what actually was used in the books, in the pamphlets that was published by or for SOE agents, by the two officers, which was Fairbairn and Sykes, which I mentioned were trained. They actually were Royal Marines. They were trained. They was police officers who became Royal Marines, and they trained in the Shanghai Municipal Police, and they learned gut fighting. And so they brought those techniques back with them. In fact, I posted a thing about Fairbairn on my company Facebook page, because it mentions about his hands were covered in scars through that type of fighting. And I was teaching them all the different ways, the correct way of cutting a man's throat. So you simply lifting the arm up and piercing just there to get to the vital organs. And they did all this. You see it in the animation, which was it was good. And there was lots of other things I showed them which they didn't put in there because they thought it was a bit too violent.
Yeah. Was it the cinematic trailer for it?
No, it's called The Art of Stealth.
So Sniper Elite 5 Art of Stealth?
The Art of Stealth, yeah.
Is that the bit where he's like creeping up towards somebody at a checkpoint thing?
He's like creeping up to it's basically when I'm creeping up to my son.
Right. I think I've seen it.
And then obviously they photo-rendered my face and turned me into a character as well.
Yeah, you're the first sort of guy that the main character's with in the submarine, aren't you?
I'm looking at I'm looking at the face of the main guy, and I've got to say, it does look a bit like you.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known. And when you posted it on Twitter, I was like, I see that now. It was a nice little Easter egg as well to have yourself replicated in game. It must be really nice, nice thing to have.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'll say I've been Action Man. Of
course.
For the MOD's Action Man Paratrooper series. Things they did when I was on sale at Toys R Us at $12.99, which was I was very proud of that. That was one of my big talking ones. And now I'm in a computer game. So
did you manage to convince them to give you realistic genitalia, or did you still have the blue plastic pants?
Well, no, unfortunately,
What a
I
question.
did say I wasn't happy with the biceps.
Oh, right.
Well, there is a gay action man doll which has additional
Yeah.
parts. So.
I actually said that to the MOD when they sent me my free action men as a thank you for being the paratrooper action man, and I sent an email back through ModNet because I was still serving. So thank you very much, but I'm not happy that the biceps are not to scale.
So I think
Fantastic.
is this you and your son here? Can you see that, Paul?
I can't see that at the moment. No.
Ah, trying to share screen here. Don't know if you can you see that, Robbie? Is this
I can see the screen itself. Yeah, I don't know if it's on the actual live for the people.
I've got too much. I've got too much crap on here. I've got the videos. There's a shot of you and another chap doing motion capture stuff. You've got the blue bits on your body, and he's got the sort of lime green.
That's Corby, my son.
That's your son. Okay.
Yeah, one of them. I've got 5.
You got 5 sons.
Yeah.
I bet your missus is upset with you. She must have wanted a girl at some point.
Yeah.
They all do. So you know. So is that him behind the sandbags there?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And I mean, this is the plot of Sniper Elite 5. Is it like the lead up to Normandy? I saw it goes over Point to Hock.
I think so. Yeah.
That's an aerial shot of going over Point to Hock at the beginning. Oh man, that looks like a cracking.
Yep. I keep wishing them to do one set in Nam or set in the Cold War, because there's so much you can do with that series. I hope they make more.
Yeah, you never know. There's so much. There's so much you can do.
Oh, it's there, Paul. I've alluding to anything there.
Well, I've been saying to somebody who works in that computer world. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Fallout Las Vegas, but you know, it's a free roaming. You're a guy like in Sniper Elite. You're roaming around and you do various missions. I don't understand why somebody like Rebellion hasn't gotten on to the fact that if we took one battle, let's just say Arnhem, because that's a map you could build realistically, and you're playing. You can pick which unit you go in, and you can even be on the side of the Germans, and then the whole battle is then played out in real time, and where your guy goes and what he does, like a stone being dropped in a pond, has a ripple effect, and that can change everything else that goes on in the battle. And then the replay value is amazing because you can just start it again and go in as a different unit, and then you could do one with Normandy, and you could choose to either go in on a beach or with the British or with the 101st or with the 82nd. Yeah, I think it would be a hotcake seller. That so for anybody watching, don't steal that idea because it's mine. So but I am talking to a guy, a designer, about it, and we're thinking of trying to put together some pitch package for it for Rebellion, funnily enough. So you know, give us a meeting, Rebellion, if you're watching, because I really think that would make a lot of money, man. I really do. World War II, no one's done a free roaming historical World War II sort of RPG.
Not yet, no, not yet.
So out of all the stuff you've done, Paul, it's a pretty substantial list in a relatively short period of time, which I think is an indication of your level of professionalism, and you know that you're good at your job. What piece that you've worked on that you look back on now, would you say, not including the things we haven't been able to see yet? I'm particularly proud of that.
Well, without mentioning the things that I can't mention.
Don't mention forget them. Stuff that has been out.
The unmentionables.
I mean, I love the strike backs because the strike back seasons. I mean, it's such a pity they don't redo them. Because I was actually talking to Jack only the other day about it, and and it's like they were doing so well, and it was frustrating that there were certain elements that weren't putting as much thought into maybe highlighting it as one, as some should have done, because there was so much good material in there, and it was every day was a car chase, a gun battle. It was such a good crew, the locations, everything about it. So we did 6 months in Malaysia, and that was one of those little pinching moments because I fly to Malaysia. I'm in Kuala Lumpur. I'm in this posh apartment overlooking at night all the flashing lights, and I'm like, wow, yeah, 6 months.
Nice work if you can get it, I guess.
Yeah, and then I did 6 months in Croatia, again 3-bedroom apartment, and it's great. We're going to all these great locations, and even to the point was helping write a mission for one of the scenes, which was a helicopter assault. But no, it's so many things. Again, I can go on about. It's so much.
I can't remember if we had this conversation, but presumably you're familiar with Operation Barras.
Yeah.
Sierra Leone. Yeah, I wrote a screenplay about that called In the Shadow of the Valley. And of course, you got two distinct different units there. You got the Paras who dropped into that field and went straight up to their necks in mud because they thought it was solid and it wasn't. And then you got the SAS that came into the village direct with the helicopters. And that was the first screenplay I ever wrote that had any substantial action in it. Yeah. So when I wrote it, I thought, well, the hardest bit to write of this is going to be the actual battle. So let me start with that, and then I'll work backwards. And that's what I did. And it nearly got made like about 3 times. It's another one of those projects that looked like it was a go, and then it wasn't. Yeah. And then,
Well, it's very similar to how I helped Jack craft the mission on Strike Back. It was basically a heliborne assault straight onto the enemy. I had a guy that was there that was performing a recce on the area that had done a 360 CTR, like close target recce. He placed some diversionary explosives to draw the enemy away from the HLS. And I remember the production saying, "Oh, would they really just go like that?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And I mentioned Operation Barras, and I mentioned that there was one trooper, Brad Tinian, that was killed.
Yeah, big guy, really big guy.
Yeah. So I mentioned I used that as my reasoning behind this is what would happen, because the producers were like, well, would that really happen? And so I said, well, there are some situations where you would go balls deep and go get straight in there and go for it. And and they went with it in the end, and they did exactly that. We had 2 helicopters coming in, they landed straight on. The helicopters took off after exfilling the guys, so there wasn't fast roping down like they did from Chinooks on Barras and that. And and we had an SF. It's supposed to be similar to One Para, which was then created the SFSG, which was called TAC, which is a Tactical Advance Company. So that was like the One Para element, and then you had the Section 20 SF guys going in.
So let me give you a scenario. So let's say we were going to film that Operation Barras, and I've got I think in that script there'd be about something like 20 principals. It's quite a big ensemble cast, and we've got to do the action scene. I mean, obviously, all of the actors would have to go through a degree of training and everything. But would your advice to the director be, when it comes to the helicopter assault, would it be
stunts?
Stunts for that, and then let's pick up the actors on the ground. That would be my gut. Yeah.
You wouldn't risk. There's no insurance. There's no insurers on this planet with risk having unless the guy who is the main actor is the producer and he's got a big financial stake in that movie, for example.
Or he's Tom Cruise and he's going to.
I was just about to say this thing, where he's just say, "Well, I'll cover that risk." But other than that, no, it would be stunts that would do that. So you'd have it where they move to the rope, maybe an interior in the Chinook. They move to the rope, just about to get onto it. You'd cut, and then from the exterior, you'd see stunts going down. Yeah, and then you cut, and then voila, they're coming off the rope, moving into their formations.
Well, it's good to know that my first choice on that one was the correct one then. Well, look, we're coming up for 2 hours, so I think we should wrap things up because you've probably got to be on set in the early hours. Robbie, you got any final questions you want to jump in with? Maybe anything I've missed that you...
I mean, you alluded to it at the start, but I think maybe because obviously coming from a war movie podcast, Paul, just what's your favourite war film? It's really simple.
I mean,
Personally,
Zulu.
yeah, strong, very strong.
Yeah,
It's
that definitely would be in my top 10. Definitely be in my
Yeah.
top 10. Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of my favourite ones. I mean, A Bridge Too Far obviously is another one.
How do you like
And
Zulu
the Wild
Dawn?
Geese, the scene on the Wild Geese. I'm actually, there's a film I'm working on. I'm going to recreate that scene where you've got, I forgot his character now, but he's got the president on his back and he's running through a bush.
Oh yeah, with the SLR. That's Hardy Kruger.
Hardy Kruger.
Yeah.
I'm basically
Peter
try and
Kurtzy.
recreate that scene for something I'm working on out in Turkey.
Nice.
Good.
So I'll give you your heroic scene.
Yeah.
So we're going to try and
Love it.
obviously they're not paratroopers, unfortunately, but
No.
they're rangers. So I suppose it's close.
Oh, look good.
That's a classic scene, and and his death
I
scene.
mean, I assume as an ex-para, you like Theirs Is the Glory too.
Yeah. I remember that one.
Yeah, it's a good.
There was the other
good
one. There was another. That was a real good. There was a good film, and it's very. I forgot the name of it now. It was about three paras that were behind enemy lines and had to make their way back. I can't remember
Oh,
the
do you
name.
mean the one that came out?
The Long Days Dying? Is that it?
Could be that one. Yeah. Could be
Yeah.
that one. I remember one of them getting a pit. It was butcher skewer, which he'd had in his webbing, which I tried to introduce. Which I tried to introduce into Sniper Elite.
Okay.
Which was improvised weapons, which was
Right.
a skewer with basically just a piece of wood that's weaved into the webbing as a basically a hidden weapon if they got caught. But yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I think it was A Long Day's Dying.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's the one you're thinking of. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, we could quite easily have talked for another couple of hours. When the aforementioned 5 films, and there's others actually in this list that's scrolling past the screen now, have come out, you can come back and talk to us about Oompa Loompa Battalion weapons training and training with dinosaurs and working with Harrison Ford, etc., etc. All those juicy questions. If you're willing, we can get you back on. I'd love to have you back, and I'd be interested as well. I'd do another show called Chewing the Fat, where we talk about top 10 favorite movies. Robbie was on one of those where we talked about top 10 favorite World War II films. There's another historical one of those I'm going to do down the road. So if you're available and I can get you on as a guest co-host, that'd be great to hear your military, opinion on some of those productions. It's all stuff I love to talk about. Robbie, anything you want to plug? Because you got some podcasts coming up and stuff.
Yeah, like the Fighting on Film podcast. If you haven't, anyone is a war movie fan out there. I mean, we go through the classics, but we also try and uncover
it's all down there.
People don't talk about. So yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of war films, I've had some great guests, like the director of Ungentlemanly Acts, Stuart Urban. I've just talked to Jim Dowdle today, legendary stuntman, about his career. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty coming up, and you can find us on the website there and wherever you get your podcasts.
I didn't realise you had Stuart Urban on. I saw you did a podcast about
we did a 20th. Well, it would have been for the 40th. It was for the 38th anniversary of the Falklands at the time, and we had some of the cast on as well. I think we had Ian McNeice and Hugh Ross. I mean, we had a bit of a reunion episode. It's a really, really good one.
Yeah, I love Hugh Ross. Hugh Ross is a friend of mine. Really, really lovely guy. Well, look, Paul, brilliant to have you on. Really look forward to seeing the new stuff coming out that you've worked on. I'm hoping if I ever get to do my World War II film, either of them, I'll have you on the set with a bit of luck, if we can afford you, that is. But certainly you'd be at the top of my list. I can promise you that. So, guys, thanks very much for tuning in and watching. Do share the love. Subscribe to the channel. We're creeping up to 1,000 subscribers now. We've had quite a few in the last couple of weeks. Do tell your friends and everything. This is the place to come to for frank and honest advice about anything creative in front or behind the camera or on stage, or indeed to do with games or writing, screenwriting, and so forth. We're going to try and get all the best information for you here. So it just remains for me to say thanks very much for tuning in for another Industry Interviews, and we shall see you all again soon.